Today we will be talking about how you empower yourself. And it's quite a large and open question, and it's also very subjective. Where do you begin when you ask yourself this question, or say to yourself, I need to be empowered, I want to empower myself? Perhaps a good place to begin is to look at how you may have got disempowered. I would say that the essential, original condition of a human being is to be in their power, and that is our starting point. We do not, in my view, evolve to a position of personal empowerment, but we begin with having lost it. And so it is a matter of going deep into the self, a form of, you might want to say, spiritual archaeology. You want to go down deep and find out how and when and where, under what circumstances did your personal power get eroded or stolen, or somehow you got broken into and disempowered. There may be external forces at work that you may not be able to put your finger on or pinpoint. Where does a person begin? As I said before, it's really very subjective. I think that it's safe to say that most people grow up in a relatively dysfunctional family environment. Maybe also your school environment is fraught with difficulties, traumas, shocks, disappointments, feelings of betrayal. Another area where a person experiences this sort of disempowerment is in the environment of their religious education. So these three areas, the home, the school, the religious environment, it can also extend to the community environment. And usually it begins when you're really very young. When a person is very young, they have some kind of inner compass, inner feeling about what is right, what is wrong, what is comfortable, what is uncomfortable. And very often it happens to people that this becomes broken into or broken down at a very, very young age, creating confusion inside. One of the areas where it's really very difficult is when you feel something inside, an inner voice where you're talking to yourself about what seems right, what seems wrong, what seems real, who you can trust, what is safe. And sometimes there are external voices, beings, circumstances, which are at odds with your inner sense of these things. In that kind of situation, you're experiencing greater or lesser traumas. One of the difficulties that is experienced by people who grow up in dysfunctional environments is when the environment contains violence. If the caretakers are participating in drugs or alcohol, what the child experiences is a great deal of moral confusion, because there is inconsistency in the environment where there should be consistency and everything should have its own logic. When this logic breaks down, then the environment becomes unsafe, whether it's actually unsafe or whether it might become unsafe. And in a situation like that, the child becomes hypervigilant. And the ability to grow in a normal way, to develop emotionally, and to move through the stages of child development may be arrested, sometimes at a very young age, and then you grow physically, but you don't grow emotionally. And you find that you stay maybe on the inside of your being, and you begin to develop a sense of the world which is according to your perception, where your personal growth is arrested. And there you begin to develop different signs of trauma. And these signs are very often interpreted by the people around you as that there is something wrong with you. Sometimes you may hear messages that you're not good enough, that if only you were a boy, that would be all right. This is said to girls, that because you are a girl, there's a problem. If you were a boy, everything would be fine. And you begin to dislike yourself as a girl. For boys, it is very often said, why can you not be like your father? Why can you not be like your brother? And you begin to experience a message that there's something wrong with you because you are you. And that if you would be all right, you would be like your father or like your brother, but it is not all right for you to be just you. And so you begin to doubt the internal messages that come to you from your heart, from the voice of conscience. One thing that may happen to you is that you get punished, not because you did something wrong that is within the purview of your understanding of right and wrong, but on certain days that behavior is wrong, whereas on other days that behavior is just fine. You, as a small child growing up in a dysfunctional environment, are naturally egocentric. That means the way you perceive your environment, whether it's at home or at school or in your place of religious worship, you position yourself in the center of the world. If your development is arrested at an early age, like 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, then you remain egocentric and you interpret what is taking place as being because of you. So that if something around you is happening in a very negative way, you will feel that it's because of you. And quite often, you'll be accused of being the cause of something that disturbed someone who was disturbed not because of you, but by something completely different, but you get blamed for it, either by the person who's disturbed or by another person who is close to that person who's disturbed. All of this adds up to a situation where it becomes very difficult for you to concentrate on something like schoolwork, because all of your energy is going to protecting yourself, to anticipating some or another unexpected catastrophe from the adult world around you, And instead of those people being your protectors and giving you consistent and coherent guidance and rules and an environment that you can comprehend, which doesn't shift unexpectedly, all of your energy goes on trying to hold it all together. And then you go to school and you're told that you have attention deficit disorder, or that you're very stupid or very slow, and you are reflected back in a way that doesn't really reflect the real you back. But what's reflected back is your attempts to cope with a very difficult situation. And those people who are reflecting back to you, they're not reflecting back to you what you are. They're reflecting back to you what has been done to you, as if you are responsible for what has been done to you. And this gives you a very confusing moral message, so that a lot of your energy gets caught up in trying to interpret what these messages really mean, because what you feel from the inside is one thing, and what you hear from the outside doesn't compute with what you feel from the inside. Plus, you may also, in order to survive, you may also need to create a kind of fantasy reality which gives you some kind of comfort. And then this creates a disturbance in your perception, and you are not anymore able to perceive things as they are in a neutral way, but you perceive them through a filter of what they might be, or a filter that resembles like a dream or a nightmare, and you never know which reality is the real reality. And one of the problems that happens as a child grows up like this is that your mind and heart get progressively frozen over, and you start to learn behaviors that enable you to get by in the social environment without drawing attention to yourself that would be painful. Some children, they respond to this by acting out, which in many ways is really very healthy, because the child who is acting out is protesting against the circumstances which in reality are unjustifiable, unsuitable. It is not possible for a person to be at ease, and so they will react. They may become hysterical, they may become violent, they may refuse to go to school, they may run away from home. And always when they get caught, they will be punished either with physical beatings or with being kept away, or locked up in their room, or denied food, or denied access to the bathroom, and then shamed for how they have to handle themselves in that situation. Another thing that many children experience is some kind of molestation or sexual abuse by the adults, who then say, well, of course the child is lying. Children always lie. Or if you're a girl and you point out something, then you will be shamed and punished, and also told that you're making it up, and that you're not responsible, that you're bad. And gradually the child becomes more and more isolated from the society and is effectively in some kind of a survival mode. So these are different ways as you grow up that gradually you are progressively disempowered, and at the same time the circumstances prevent you from developing normally and developing the ability to defend yourself, protect yourself, stand up for yourself, represent yourself, and you gradually become someone that you are not. Because you learn quite quickly how to please people and prevent them from violating you by pleasing them in particular ways. You learn to become, in certain circumstances, something like a robot, where you will perform according to certain cues that are given to you, but which doesn't have anything to do with who you are as a person and what your actual and real responses would be if you were being really true to yourself and if you were representing yourself as you are and expressing yourself as you feel, as you think, as you want. And in this way, you gradually lose contact with yourself, you lose faith in yourself, and you become, in order to survive, something that comes under the influence of external authority figures. And these may be illegitimate authorities in the sense that they're abusing their authority, but you are so unable to be your own person that you come under these influences and you really lose the ability to be who you are. You forget who you are. In such a situation, you may protect yourself by entering the world of books or games or cartoons or nowadays computer games. There are many children who will they will do something like move away from their contact with their bodies, and they will go into some sort of an out-of-body state of being, and they will operate as if they are almost like an alien from another planet, looking at the world that they have grown up in, more or less as if that is an unreal world, and the world that they live in is real. In fact, they're creating an imaginary world, and that imaginary world works as long as they are away from the real world. But as soon as you come into the real world, then you can interact with it relatively well within certain limits, but it's quite small limits. And as soon as the circumstances become something that you haven't anticipated yet, then you're lost. So I'm describing ways in which personal power gets eroded over many years in the environment of the home, the environment of the school, the environment of the community, the environment of the religious experience, and it'll be also something which progressively makes you believe that you're bad. So sometimes someone who believes that they're bad, they will say, okay, I'll prove to you just how bad I am, and they behave in a very antisocial way. They may become violent, brooding, moody, dark. Such a person will fairly quickly start taking drugs and using alcohol, tobacco, just to feel more or less okay inside. But then they go into highs and lows and more away from the ability to function normally in a normal environment. And so that when such a person comes into an environment which is, I call it normal, which is functional, where the people are logical, where people are not on some or another consciousness altering substance, then they don't know how to operate. They do not know how to have lasting relationships. They can engage in an introductory relationship, but very soon they get out of their depth. They don't know how to manage it. And this is another reason why a person may use tobacco, alcohol, or something stronger to be able to feel all right in a social environment. And all the while, the person is not able to function normally in the workplace or in their place of education or in the community. They can't really make deep friendships, and so there is a terrible isolation that goes on, which has to be compensated for by an artificial personality that they built. And a lot of people will call this the false ego, something like that. These are some of the things that have disempowered a person. Some of them can be mild, some of them can be very extreme, but I think most people are affected by them to a greater or lesser extent. Another aspect which compounds the problem is if, as you're growing up, there is political instability or there is some kind of natural disaster which creates further stress on the system and which you also have to deal with, and you are reduced even further in your competency in handling the external environment. So you go further into your unreal environment, which you feel comfortable in and you feel is very normal and real, but it's very one-sided because it's inside your head, it's inside your being. And you lose contact with conscience, you lose contact with your emotions, your heart, your body. Very often a person will have very, very tight muscles, very tight feeling in the body, but will be quite unaware of it. And this will also put you in a situation of chronic pain, of different kinds of illnesses, or it can create a problem like bulimia or other eating disorder, or you may be an overeater because that will give you comfort. So a person in a situation like this, and they say, okay, now I want to come into my power, or somebody else will say to them, how come you don't just get into your power? And they will say, yeah, you're right, I'm not in my power, I need to come into my power, but no idea what to do, no idea how. So what could be an initial step? I think probably the first thing is to realize that I'm seriously not in my power. I'm affected by many, many things, and it becomes quite difficult to say this because one is also very much in denial. You become very good at passing for normal in simple situations. And so if somebody will confront you and say, you know, you're really not in your power, you don't know how to work, you don't know how to have relationships, what happened to you? What will you say? Oh, nothing, I'm fine. You know, you're not. But it is so painful and so difficult to begin the process of bringing yourself into your power that it's paralyzing. So I think one thing that is very beneficial is to be able to experience what it's like to be at peace. When people use consciousness altering substances, why do they use them? Because of not being able to handle their feelings, and because of a hope, a desire, maybe an experience. Somebody gives you something and you feel really good, you feel really relaxed, you say, oh yeah, I want this, I need this, you become an addict. But to go there, to be in that deep peace, can sometimes happen to a person suddenly. It could be you find yourself in a really beautiful place and somehow you get touched and you get an extraordinary feeling that this is what it's like to be me. You feel yourself, you recognize yourself. It's like a gift that comes to you from nowhere or somewhere that you don't know. And then you say, yes, I need this. How do I get this? How do I come here? How do I return back to my lost self? What do I do? A situation like this, it is a sort of spiritual awakening. Maybe just a taster, but it happens quite often to people when they really reach the end of their rope and suddenly something will happen and they feel this. So here in our sessions together, we're looking at making contact with the soul at the deepest level, and this through meditation. So let us take a few moments to just go inside and be very quiet with the self. And give yourself the permission to be exactly who you are. Give yourself the right to be free, to be loved, to have access to your lost inner power. Let yourself get carried by an extraordinary force which is so gentle, so sweet, so close to you that you can trust it. Let yourself feel what it is to be all right. Let yourself be in peace. Feel the tension of your being gently loosening. and falling away. Feel yourself to be like a beautiful flower that opens in the warmth of the sunshine. You feel your heart. Your heart wounded badly, but yet there is a glow inside that tells you there is hope for you. That glow is warm and golden. Filling your heart, the feeling of comfort. You feel strength, some kind of energy flowing into you. You feel as if you have been dead for a very long time, but that you're coming out of that cold, unconscious state of being dead, but yet you are alive. You feel that energy moving around in your heart, in your soul. Like springtime coming after a long winter. And it sets up a longing that I want to have this, to be this, to go there when I want. Let yourself just enjoy that gentleness, as if you have become again a child in the safety of a warm embrace, where no one expects anything from you, and you are free just to be you. And gently let yourself come back to the place where you're sitting, back to the world as it is, with its shadows and its bright lights, with the stresses and challenges. But let that feeling of quiet peace stay with you. Keep it in your bones, in your heart, and know that it is there for you, a thought away. So thank you for your attention, and I hope that you will take time to think about these things and we will be together again shortly to take it to the next step. Thank you and goodbye.